It's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. What are some ambitious comments from young Sky Nicholson ahead of her fight tomorrow with Sarah Mahfoud and what could be an Amanda Serrano fight? Sky says, Serrano is the dream fight. I am ready and waiting. I want the best. I want the belts. So I'm going to keep pushing for that. 12 threes suits my style. If the only way to fight Serrano is over 3 minutes, sign me up.
The WBC wouldn't sanction that fight.
If Sky Nicholson wins tomorrow, the way I think she's going to win, and she becomes the WBC champion, subsequently challenges Amanda Serrano for her belts, Sky's own belt wouldn't be on the line because the WBC would not sanction the fight. But them not sanctioning the fight doesn't mean it couldn't happen.
They can work it out.
To where, if Sky Nicholson wins, she wins Amanda's belts, but if Amanda wins, and I think she would, she'd keep her own. Maybe she doesn't get the WBC title, but she already had it anyway.
She doesn't need it at this point.
I favor Sky Nicholson to win tomorrow's fight with former champion Sarah Mahfoud because, as stated, I feel that Sky has more raw talent and better form than Sarah Mahfoud. She's better at the basics, and that's a lot of small areas that make a big difference.
She's younger too, faster.
And so I favor Sky Nicholson to win tomorrow's fight and effectively become WBC featherweight champion. But if I don't favor her to win an Amanda Serrano fight thereafter,
especially not over 12 3-minute rounds,
I would favor Amanda to beat Sky over 10 2-minute rounds, let alone 12 3-minute rounds, because the added time doesn't favor Sky. It doesn't favor the cerebral fighter,
no.
The economic fighter,
no.
The mover. It doesn't favor her.
It favors Amanda.
In so many ways, in so many areas. For starters, even though Amanda Serrano is some years older than Sky Nicholson, she has more rounds in the bank than Sky Nicholson.
A lot more.
Amanda Serrano sports a professional record of 46 wins with 2 losses, 1 draw, 30 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 49 professional bouts, close to 50 fights, whereas Sky has a meager 9 professional bouts and 1 recorded knockout, 10 tomorrow.
Think about how many rounds in the bank Amanda has.
In what are more high-octane, more high-paced fights than any fight Sky Nicholson has ever had, you tell yourself that Amanda is some years older and perhaps more weathered than Sky.
Maybe.
As usually, it's Amanda Serrano dishing out the punishment, not receiving it. The way I see it, Amanda's got more rounds in the bank, and that speaks to Amanda's conditioning. If you've seen her fights, you'll know she can throw punches in bunches from the opening round to the final round, whereas Sky's fights are at a more controlled pace. She's never really been in deep waters, never been in a war.
A 10-round war, a 12-round war.
Speaks to the fighter's conditioning, that even though Amanda is some years older than Sky, her engine might be better because she's got more rounds in the bank. She's used to it.
Sky is still getting used to it.
Sky, who figures that the added time within the round would favor her more economic outside fighting as opposed to Amanda's volume punching.
No, that's going to be harder on Sky's engine.
Not Amanda's. Amanda's used to it. The Jamie Mercado fight, the Sarah Mahfoud fight, the Danilo Ramos fight.
How many times have you seen these fighters that think they can stay on the outside of Amanda Serrano just to end up getting outworked by Amanda Serrano?
Sky wouldn't be any different. You know what her strategy is, what it would be. Staying on her toes, using her jab, and trying to box Amanda from the outside, not engaging.
That doesn't work.
It didn't work for Diana Santana the 2 times that Amanda Serrano fought her. It didn't work for Jamie Mercado. It didn't work for Sarah Mahfoud. It didn't work for Danilo Ramos. And it wouldn't work for Sky Nicholson.
It wouldn't work.
But why does Sky think it would? Because she figures that she's younger and fresher, lighter on her feet, somewhat faster. Yeah, maybe at the start.
Till the pace catches up.
She thinks she can walk through the water without getting wet. That's what she's telling herself. But reality is, 36 minutes is a long time to be in the ring with Amanda.
That's 36 minutes of being on your toes. 36 minutes of having to move around, because we all know Sky's not going to sit in the pocket and trade with Amanda. She's going to try to stay on the outside.
Something is going to get in. This is not Lucy Wildheart or Tania Alvarez or any of those girls that Sky Nicholson has fought so far. And whatever does get in will be harder and more damaging than anything she's felt in the pro ranks.
There's the power.
Amanda's variety of punches. Don't forget that Amanda's a body puncher. That's how she stopped Daniela Bermudez.
And that's how she could stop Sky Nicholson. If nothing else, slow her down.
When you want to take a fighter's legs away, where do? You go to the body. That's where Amanda goes.
What Sky's telling herself is that Amanda, comparatively, is a more flat-footed fighter than she is, where Sky stays on her toes the majority of a fight.
There's a rhyme and a reason for that. Amanda sits on her punches. Sky really doesn't. The amount of time that Sky Nicholson would spend playing keep away would come at the expenditure of her own energy reserves, because you can only stay out of trouble for so long.
Something's gonna get in.
Or Sky manages to survive. It goes the distance, but Sky loses because she wasn't doing enough. A lot of sugarfoot fighters like Sky Nicholson think that because they've got those fancy feet, they're gonna bull and matador every combination puncher out there, but that wouldn't be the case. When it comes to this fight, I don't begrudge Sky Nicholson her ambition,
But she would lose.
especially if it's for 12 3-minute rounds. Men's super flyweight news, an encouraging bit of intel that came to us late yesterday. Kazuto Ioka versus Fernando Martinez unification fight set on paper, set to go down later on this year. An agreement in principle has been reached to stage the super flyweight unification bout pitting Japan's longtime champion Kazuto Ioka versus Argentina's Fernando Martinez in Japan for the first week of July this summer. An official connected to the negotiation told Boxing Scene on Thursday, Martinez, 32, became champion by defeating longtime IBF champion Jerwin Ancajas of the Philippines back there in 2022. A triumph he backed up with another UD victory 8 months later, following a successful title defense by 11th round TKO over Jade Bornea in June. Martinez landed the unification against decorated veteran Ioka, a 35-year-old who wears the WBA title.
This is great.
Not but a few weeks ago, the story was that Kazuto was under orders from the WBA to satisfy his mandatory Scrappy Ramirez, a Golden Boy Promotions fighter, and that Kazuto had petitioned for an exemption to that mandatory. We now know that Scrappy is going to be boxing on the undercard for Haney versus Garcia,
He's not fighting Kazuto.
which has to mean the WBA must have granted Kazuto his wish. They must have granted him that exemption to the mandatory to unify with one of the other champions at the weight, namely Fernando Martinez. And this unification will come about a week after WBC Super Flyweight champion Gallo Estrada is scheduled to defend his title against Jesse Bam Rodriguez here in the US of A in Glendale. Japan's Shisei Promotions will handle Ioka versus Martinez. America's TGB Promotions has Martinez in its stable. 3-division champion Ioka will participate in his 26th title fight after previously standing as a minimum weight flyweight title holder. He has fought in 10 junior bantamweight title bouts since 2018, posting triumphs over the likes of McWilliams Arroyo, Donny Nietes, and then champion Joshua Franco.
He's one of the more decorated fighters Japan has produced, but he's not as talked about as Junto Nakatani, as Naoya Inoue, still decorated.
Sporting a professional record of 31 wins with 2 losses, 1 draw, 16 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 34 professional bouts. Some years older and certainly more experienced than young Fernando Martinez, who sports an unblemished record of 16 wins with no losses, no draws, 9 knockouts, best described as an aggressive slugger, volume puncher.
Kazuto would have his work cut out for him, though he wouldn't be in unfamiliar territory.
It's not that dissimilar from his assignment with Kosei Tanaka and more recently with Joshua Franco, having last seen action late last year in December, the end of it, opposite the ring Jasper Perez, who he stopped in 7 rounds.
He's fought in the last 12 months.
And been more active in the last 12 months. He fought 2 times last year, once in June, then again in December, whereas Fernando, he's been less active. He only fought once last year, the Jade Bornea fight way back there in June. That's essentially saying that if the plan sticks and this unification bout happens in July, a year will have passed since Fernando last saw action. He may have some ring rust to shake off. Best described as an Argentinian version of Luis Lopez.
Mexico's own Luis Lopez. This guy's like a smaller version of him.
In the sense that he's aggressive like Luis Lopez and athletically gifted, but a lot of what he does rely on athleticism more than fundamentals. Solid boxing fundamentals. He is a combination puncher, which more or less plays into Kazuto Ioka's counter punching. Kazuto Ioka, more economic, more reserved,
cerebral.
He's made several attempts to unify this division. Initially, he was supposed to unify with Jerwin Ancajas, but that didn't happen. Last year, he tried to unify titles with Gallo Estrada, but Gallo didn't like the money.
And now he's doing this.
Existing almost in a parallel universe to the other big names at this weight, Chocolatito, Gallo Estrada.
He hasn't had the chance to unify with them yet, but if he wins this fight with Fernando, that victory could be parlayed into yet another unification bout, with the winner of Bam Rodriguez versus Gallo Estrada.
And I like it. Now is perhaps the most opportune time for Kazuto, who's in his mid-30s, to take on Fernando. He's younger, because Fernando hasn't fought in a while. On this schedule, if it goes down in July, Fernando will not have fought in a year's time, and he may have ring rust to shake off. His timing.
Remember that Fernando Martinez is a younger guy than Kazuto, but if his timing is off, he may be in line for those hard counters from Kazuto.
A mid-range to inside fighter, counterpuncher, very good, neat and tidy.
And experience.
Seems that Fernando Martinez, a TGB Promotions fighter, which is just another way of saying PBC, they don't have much for him to do, and why would they? None of the other big names at super flyweight are on that side of the street. Not Gallo Estrada, not Chocolatito.
Not nobody.
They had the guy fight once last year in the middle of it, and then squandered the rest of the time. Squandered the rest of the year.
Good of Kazuto's team to reach out to him.
And good of TGB Promotions to not stand in the way, but perhaps it's because they don't have a choice. They don't have anything for Fernando to do, and they can't afford at this time to have it devolve into a sides of the street situation.
They have neither the fight dates or the money to haggle.
So they're letting him go. They're letting him go to Japan, where Kazuto will have home field advantage, and he will be the house fighter in what is a Shisei promotion.
I told you fighters were going to start to float away.
You're seeing it more and more. I don't think most people realize that Fernando is a PBC fighter, and how uncharacteristic it is of the PBC and their stable to outsource so many of their fighters, a direct byproduct of limited amount of fight dates they now have at Amazon. Just 12 to 14.
I'm not complaining.
Just saying, I told you this would happen. Without the resources, the finances, the fight dates for these fighters to accommodate them, they have no choice but to let them go somewhere else.
The ones they're not that invested in.
You all know that the Asian market is a more fertile market for a super flyweight than the American market. Most Americans don't watch the lower weights.
So they're not that invested.
And that's fine, that these negotiations did not fall by the wayside based on side of the street politics. The best side of the street for this fight is Japan, is Shisei Promotions, and I hope it goes down.
In July.
And finally, in men's heavyweight news, Anthony Joshua was asked if Tyson Fury's constant ribbing affected his psychology, to which he responded, 100%. You take it personally, and you meditate on it. You want to punish them for what they say about you. So everything he says, I've got it all stored in the back of my memory, and when the fight happens, I'm going to use it as fuel.
The potential for the fight to happen is there, whether Tyson Fury wins in May or loses.
If he loses to Usyk, the fight between him and Anthony Joshua can still happen, and it can still be worth a lot of money, because it's really not about a belt or some belts. It's about bragging rights. It's a grudge match, a domestic grudge match between UK fighters. Fury being older than Anthony Joshua, I think the signs are all there that he is on the slide. He is in decline, and what will that Usyk fight take out of him? Win or lose?
I favor Anthony to win. I favor Anthony to knock him out.
If Alexander Usyk doesn't beat him to the punch, if Usyk doesn't do it for him. Now, according to the idea of his departure from the sport, Anthony said, I've always said I'll retire at 35. I'm 35 in October. I'm thinking another 2 years or so, if my body holds out, and it might. He's a more consummate professional than Tyson Fury, than Deontay Wilder, more active in the last 2 years.
Going on 2 years.
The previous era is coming to a close, and many of the established names have 1 foot halfway out the door, more or less. You're talking about Deontay Wilder. You're talking about Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, and to some extent, Anthony Joshua.
Who's been very good for the sport.
Good for the division, got it. A lot of attention. I firmly believe that the only reason heavyweight boxing is where it is right now, it's because of Anthony Joshua more than anybody else. After that Klitschko fight, that blew the roof. So imagining a heavyweight division without these established names, Anthony Joshua among them, who becomes the heir apparent?
Those are big shoes to fill.
Who's going to fill them? Moses Ituama, Johnny Fisher, Fabio Wortley, Frazier Clark?
Daniel Dubois is a lot more experienced than those guys, but he's still young. He has many good years left.
Will he become the authority at heavyweight in the absence of these more established names. One thing's for sure, the proliferation of talent in the United Kingdom secures its future in the next era of heavyweights.
But there's still going to be a lot of money in the UK.
Perhaps some in the US if unbeaten up-and-comers like Jared Anderson and Richard Torres can steal their thunder. We'll see what shakes out. Eddie Hearn chimed in on Anthony Joshua's potential departure. Him considering retirement in 2 years, he said, "I think he's in the form of his life and enjoying his boxing more than ever. While you're doing that, why not stay as long as you can? I think 2 years is about right. Hopefully he gets the winner of Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk, then we'll see what there is to do."
Rumor has it he may end up facing the winner of Hrgovic versus Dubois beforehand.
Due to the Fury versus Usyk two-way rematch clause, that whoever loses that fight, they may so activate the clause and get an immediate rematch. But I've been telling you, if Fury loses that fight, I don't think he activates the clause. I don't think he's going to want to run it back.
Eddie's busy talking about Anthony fighting the winner. Well, what if Fury is the loser?
What if it happens that way? Nobody really wants to see a third Joshua versus Usyk fight. And the bigger fight comparatively would still be Joshua versus Fury. So say that happens. Usyk beats Fury, but Fury doesn't activate the clause. He takes some time off. What does Anthony do in that situation? In that situation, maybe he faces the winner of Hrgovic versus Dubois
in September.
You're thinking to yourself, what about Usyk? If Usyk isn't tied down to another Tyson Fury fight, won't he face the winner of Hrgovic versus Dubois? Maybe not. Maybe after becoming undisputed, seeing as he doesn't have to fight Fury again, maybe he retires. Usyk's getting long in the tooth. Usyk is getting up there in age.
If he retires, he's not around to face the winner of Hrgovic versus Dubois.
The winner goes on to face Anthony Joshua in September for the IBF title, the vacant IBF title. Fury takes some time off because remember, in this scenario, we're talking about a scenario where Fury loses to Usyk. So Joshua faces the winner of that fight, wins the IBF, then defends it against Fury in the coming year.
2025.
It's one way it all could break down because I'm convinced Usyk is going to beat him. Usyk is going to beat Fury, and that directly affects what happens afterwards.